Alright, so when you begin to look at the difference between the Israelite and the Egyptian, we're not the same people. We're completely different. One of the main things you always look at DNA. The significance with DNA is that DNA, the main objective of it is to store information and then at the proper time distribute information. This is how you get your lineages. This is how you get, that's why even when you're not at the scene of a crime, they can tell whether you were there. Why? If you leave traces of your DNA, they can pinpoint that and they can come get you, right? You done seen the Maury show where they say, you are the father, you're not. Why? Because of DNA. It stores information that at a set time, it distributes information. One of the main functions of this that we go by is haplogroups. Despite how you feel about haplogroups or whatnot, or what they do with the blood after they receive the DNA, is that they begin to pinpoint where you're from or who you connect to from off the other side of the earth. Reason why is because they're trying to find your matches. When you begin to look at sub-Saharan Africans, right? The West Africans, that culture is predominantly the Hebraic culture. You have to look at oral traditions. You have to look at what they're saying about themselves. You have to look at their practices, right? And you also have to look at blood. That's the main thing, because it's the blood that connects. The blood still yet speaks. Then you begin to compare that with the so-called African American. Our haplogroup, along with the West Africans, are E1B1A. I'm going to try to summarize it or whatnot, not to make it difficult for you. But it's E1B1A. Now, going off of today, what everybody seems to think is the Egyptian DNA of today is E1B1B. But that is not the correct haplogroup for the Egyptian. It's actually haplogroup A. But looking at because the E1B1B is actually a sister or a brother haplogroup to the Israelite or the E1B1A, which means we're relatives just from different branches, right? So when you start looking at that, you begin to see the E1B1B even all across North Africa, East Africa, and it is not in alignment with who we are, right? When you begin to look at the scriptures, it talks about in Zephaniah chapter 3, it says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my dispersed Israel will bring mine offering. All right, when you look at Ethiopia is on the east, the opposite of the east is the west. This is where we fled to throughout history. A whole bunch of Hebrew nations, Hebrew tribes are in that area, such as the Ewe, the Ewe, the Igbo. Different tribes still house that Hebraic faith, right? So by blood, just by blood alone, there is no way possible we could be Egyptian, right? Then when you begin to look at a lot of the studies, you begin to look at their articles and books that discusses the evidence of the Negro population inside of ancient Egyptian culture. And they begin to talk about how the Negroes influenced it. Now, a lot of that come because they want to try to say that the Egyptian was a Caucasoid type people, because they're looking at the people in the land today, right? Which is not conclusive, because anything that originates starts with color. You can get every color out of black, but you can't get white out of black. You understand what I'm saying? So everything is connected to the melanin or the tone of the skin. There's a book called Black Image in the White Mind where a craniologist by the name of Morton, he did a study and he began to compare the Egyptian skull with that of the African American. And he concluded that the African American had the same servile function in ancient Egypt as they do in America today.